Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Today there's three things I want to talk about. One is my weekend, and I'm going to need to mention Catherine O'Hara. Two is a post I did on Friday regarding Excel and my relationship with ranges and tables. And three, something a bit more personal to me, Warkworth Drama Group, and if you get in the area, something you can get involved with yourself. I'm here at the historic Tynemouth railway station. One of the things that my wife and I love to do is watch horror films. But there's a particular brand of horror films, the type of thing that you saw at Nightmare on Elm Street. But for us, it's not even horror itself. There's a quirky set of films which are dark and comedy-esque, and that's the mind that comes, that's the worlds that come from Tim Burton. One of my top 5 favourite films of all time is Nightmare Before Christmas. But for my wife and I, one of the films that we love from before we started dating, and we'll be dating now for 29 years, is Beetlejuice. And Catherine O'Hara's performance in that is transcendent. But for us, and I know for many people, she's the mum from Home Alone. But a few years ago, we started watching a TV show before it blew up, before it got big, which had that quirky sort of humour which I find lacking in a lot of modern short TV shows and comedy, and that was Schitt's Creek. Schitt's Creek, we just randomly stumbled across right when it first started airing, and Catherine O'Hara's, it's an ensemble cast. All the people involved in that are absolutely fantastic, but Catherine O'Hara, she just binds it all together with her over-the-top, almost non-comedy, accidental comedy, it feels like at times, even though it's obviously deliberate. And that show, it's a type of, shows the modern lifestyles of people in a real light. There's scenes in there that I think the modern generation should watch and learn and understand how to interact with each other. That show is absolutely brilliant, and when we started watching it, it was probably halfway through the first episode where we're like, is that her from Beetlejuice? And obviously it was, and we bonded over her as an actress, her films, her contribution. And if it was just our youth, that'd be something that, we would go back from a nostalgic point of view. But having a more recent encounter with her on screen, it was absolutely brilliant. And it is such a shame to hear about her passing. And she'll always be meaningful to us for the shows that she was involved with. And her portrayal on screen, absolutely brilliant. The rest of the weekend was fine. No football, as you can guess, with the rain. My wife and daughter baked an absolutely fantastic cake that I may have been the only one that actually liked. It was quite a unique recipe, but I enjoyed it. I will put pictures up now of that. Talking of my daughter, she saw me editing last week's video and asked why I was filming in a prison. I didn't really realise when I was doing it, the barbed wire at the back, the big yellow sign was giving prison vibes. Now that I look at it, yeah, I can see where she's coming from. And I'll try and pick better locations. When it's windy like today, trying to find a location that is out the wind enough to record, but also is in a interesting location. It's a interesting challenge, not a complex challenge, but one that I think I'm gonna enjoy. As I mentioned last week, I much prefer on location shoots because I'm not overthinking. I'm more relaxed than I am at the desk when I feel like I need a script and I need to consider everything that I say far more overtly than I do when I'm outside, which is why I picked this location. I'm hoping this location is more favourable. So, Excel. I've been using Excel since the early 90s when it was quite a basic program, and it was a spreadsheet. You put data on and you did a few simple calculations. It could do a lot even back then, but I wasn't using it for anything complex. And I took that ethics into jobs as I started in the noughts, just using it as a place to put data. It was only when I started doing continuous improvement projects and I started looking at other people's spreadsheets that I realized one of the main disadvantages with basic use of Excel is when spreadsheets start getting large and you start seeing sums and you go, well, what column is AB? What's actually that column actually mean? And trying to dissect what a Excel sheet is doing starts getting complicated. And it was at that point that I realized the benefits of tables, because at tables, the formula you put in is connected to the heading of the table, so you can immediately see that this is cost versus cost over marketing. And you can immediately work out what that formula is saying, rather than looking, this is AB divided by D times by column F, and you have to go back, work out what all those columns are. If those columns have additional formulas in them, it could start getting really complicated to try and dissect what they are. So about the mid-noughts, I went into a direction of everything should be tables. Everyone that any continuous improvement project I would go into, I'd go, we need to convert this to a table, then we can really see what this table is doing, and we can simplify it, we can automate it, we can move on. And that was where I stood on Excel for a good 15 years, that tables was the way forward, that anything that you were doing in terms of data analysis, in terms of improving an existing spreadsheet, was moving it from an existing spreadsheet, was from ranges into tables. Then it got to the point when I was doing data analytics, when I was dealing with people who had lots of pivot tables. And pivot tables initially in Excel seemed like a really next level advance. The problem with pivot tables is it's just presenting data. It's taking existing data, presenting them in a particular format. If you want to do any transformation, you can't do that directly in the pivot table. And what I find with a lot of people is to have an existing table next to the pivot table that does the transition. So they'll take their list of unique projects and they'll combine them into sectors, or they'll have a list of product types and they'll have a pivot table with the specific products all combined together with list of sales. And then they'll bring in the traffic from something else and they'll have a table next to the pivot table that will do the transformation. That's extremely risky. It's extremely easy for someone to come in and put an extra column on the pivot table that will completely knock that out. Also, when you refresh that table, extra rows, all that completely falls down. And actually what I found is that the spill formulas, where you take your same principle, but you say, I want to take everything unique from this data set. So you're not creating a pivot table, but you're creating the essence of a pivot table. So you're taking the unique elements from a particular database, you're pulling in from SUMIF values, you're pulling in data from that and building your own unique pivot table-esque. And if you're bringing in two different spreadsheets, so you have a key in one spreadsheet, another key, and you bring them into one data set. Once you start doing that, your data transformation can also be done using the same sort of philosophy. So you can do your data transformation, and when you update that data set, or if you have it automated, as I prefer to do, those formulas come with it. The disadvantages, you can't do that with the table. You can't use spill formulas in the table. As soon as you start using unique values, all the table elements fall down. So when I'm doing data analysis, there's always a mixture now, because of the steps I've gone through about ranges being the most simplest form, tables being actually the best way for someone externally to look at something, and then that use of pivot tables but making it unique to yourself means that if you're collecting data, table's still the best place. If you're doing any transformation, you're doing any gathering of the information, that's where your ranges sit. And then if you're producing any sort of visual, pie charts, graphs, etc., that sits in a dashboard. And my journey has allowed me to see where the best elements of those are, but also the fact that people end up with one or the other and they end up with everything in one place. So if you want help with organizing the information, you know where I am. So beyond that, the last thing I want to mention today is Warkworth Drama Group. I'm not part of Warkworth Drama Group, but Warkworth is a village in Northumberland, just north of Amble by the sea. My parents are major elements, and my mum actually runs Warkworth Drama Group, and they're putting on a new show in May called Habeas Corpus. I think it's called Habeas Corpus, but they're doing auditions for that May play, for that May performance, this Sunday and next Thursday. I'm going to put a link to the group and to. So, if you're in the area or can travel to the area and you're free the end of May for performances and you're free on a weekly basis, I don't know when the weekly practices are. Head yourself up there for the auditions, and you can be part of an absolutely brilliant amateur dramatics group. But yeah, so that's me from this week. If you have any questions, you have anything you want me to talk about, if there's any social media helps and hints and tips that you would like me to put on my social media, let me know. If you need my support on anything, put a comment down below or contact me on my email address or any of the usual ways. Hope you have a great week, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye for now. Is more favourable. So, Excel. I've been using Excel since anything that you're doing in terms of data analysis, in terms of improving an existing spreadsheet, was moving it